Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here at Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. So March is National Social Worker Month, and we are excited to highlight our amazing social work staff here at the agency. We are actually going to be pulling a podcast episode where we spoke to 3 social workers who also happen to be adoptees, Christian, Jackie, and Emily. So we are looking forward to hearing how they have collided both their personal and their professional stories to make them who they are here at the agency. So now let's turn to Christian, Jackie, and Emily.
All right, on this episode of the podcast, we have invited 3 adoptees who are adoption counselors or social workers at Adoptions from the Heart. First, we have Jackie Zausner, and Jackie was adopted domestically through AFTH's Cherry Hill office, where she actually works now. Welcome, Jackie.
Hello, yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
We also have Emily Smith, who was adopted internationally through AFTH's Russia program. Hi, Emily.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. And finally, we have Christian as well, who was adopted transracially from Chile. Welcome to our podcast, Christian.
Hey, thank you for having me.
These are 3 adoptees who now also work as adoption counselors and social workers at AFTH. Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to have you here with us. Do you all mind, and anyone can go first, I don't want to, single anybody out, but sharing a little bit about your personal journey as an adoptee and how it really maybe did or didn't, but influence your decision to work in the field of social work?
I always knew I was adopted. I was adopted through Adoptions from the Heart. So, we always focused on open adoption. Even 29 years ago looked a little bit different, but I was always proud of being an adoptee, proud of my adoptive family, my birth family, but also a lot of negative emotions, right? Struggling with my identity and just other issues that I struggled with. So therapy was huge for me, and finding someone that was in that field, although I'm not a therapist, I'm a social worker. I always, really wanted to help people. So I think just my background of kind of navigating through that hurt and that trauma and that loss, while also being, proud and positive, really kind of led me to this field.
May I ask if it's been a difficult transition into this position?
When I first started, I definitely hadn't healed fully, right? From which I recognized that very quickly and went back to therapy right away, and kind of worked through the issues that I saw, not getting in the way of my work as a social worker, but countertransference, it's very real, and being an adoptee yourself, it's inevitable to happen. So really kind of being strong and healed in a lot of those aspects, I think helped over time. But in the beginning, it was very difficult. Yeah.
Thank you for your vulnerability with that and putting in the work to make sure that servicing clients, everybody, we discuss this at our ed courses, everybody in the world has bias and has, the ability to counter transfer. And so your recognition of that, I know serves your clients well and serves you well. I appreciate that.
Like Jackie, I always knew that I was adopted. I was adopted at 1 year old from Russia. And my parents made it super clear that hey, we went all the way to Russia to go get you. So it was always a part of my story. And I would say that I was proud of it as well. My fun fact, when we would go around, they would always say your name and your age, and one fun fact to be and I'm adopted from Russia. So it was always something that was it made me really happy. So I think just having that, identity in adoption made me kind of want to jump into adoption as a career. So here I am.
For me, growing up, I always knew I was adopted as well. I had similar stories of that being my fun fact, is I was adopted from Chile. When I got into college, that's when I started realizing I wanted to know more about my adoption and how things went. And that's when it kind of opened up and I got in contact with my birth family. Also during that time was a big time when I started getting more into drugs and alcohol, and that kind of all fueled this identity crisis I was having at the time. So I also started going to therapy during that time, and It was the first time I had somebody acknowledge that my adoption was like traumatizing, even though like my story was like, it went well, and like I grew up in a good household and everything. But to have that validation made me feel more comfortable to like open up and start seeking more help. And through that help, the fortune of like being able to like help other people, whether they're in recovery or if they were adoptees. And I saw a lot of that being like a similar point of adoptees in recovery. And that was kind of like a alarming number or like rate. And that's when I first started working with adoptees. And that's when I realized like I think like I can really help a lot more people, and kind of got me more into the social work and like psychology side of the topic.
Christian, with your, experience and you sharing, your struggles with addiction and how you found a lot of other adoptees that also struggle with addiction, right? I think that's so helpful for us to acknowledge certain trends that happen. And I think, you should write that research paper on that. I think it'll be fascinating. But just acknowledging, right, that for the majority of our stories, we're coming from a place of love. We didn't really go through an immense trauma where there was like, severe neglect or abuse, right? So from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, you should be proud, you should be happy. And that's how you live most of your life, right? Until it gets to a point where you're like, crap, I'm not fully happy. I'm happy, but I'm not fully happy. So I really thank you for sharing that you went through that. I think it'll hit a lot of people.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people don't realize until they learn more about the adoption community is that adoption is traumatic. It's a traumatic event, even if you were adopted from the day that you were born and you were placed with your adoptive family right from the hospital. And I think that's a misconception and a misunderstanding a lot of people have that aren't necessarily part of that community. So I appreciate you all bringing that to light, because I think it's something that a lot of people likely haven't thought of before. I have a question for you all that I just kind of thought of when you were all speaking, in that obviously Adoptions from the Heart is an open adoption agency, but that's not something that all of our birth parents want. It's also, unfortunately, not something all of our adoptive parents have always wanted. And my question for you all is, because I get very frustrated when I'm working with, an adoptive family that's not keeping their promises, having the visits that they said that they may have. Is that a little harder for you all, having the experience that you all have? And if so, how do you navigate those emotions? Because it can be very easy to get frustrated in those times.
Yeah, it pisses me off. It does. Yeah. It's like there's so much research out there on how beneficial it is. And it's a sense of betrayal to your child, right? So when I have, obviously if birth parent, I can respect it. My birth parents, they did not, want openness. When I was 18, I was able to reconnect with them. So if it's a birth parent or expectant parent decision, totally respect that, right? But our adoptive parents need to understand, and I say it, very bluntly, that your child knows that they're adopted, right? So if you don't keep up your promise that you made, one day they might, and they might never find out about it, right? But they probably are going to find out about it, and they might really dislike you for doing that. So although it might feel uncomfortable and like, oh, what if the child loves them more than, right? All these fears. I always just suggest, talk to me about your fears, what's going through, why are we not, honoring this communication? And then we just hound them, right? So phone calls, emails, letters. We really try to advocate for our birth parents, but it's honestly for the adoptee too, right? So it just, I know, it's very frustrating. It's very, very frustrating.
I think that's one thing that we all struggle with, keeping kind of our cool around sometimes, because I know I get extremely frustrated and angry, and I have to talk it out with coworkers, because you can't let that, overtake things and affect your work. But I was just curious, because I can see how it would probably affect you even more being adoptees yourselves and knowing what that feels like.
In the same way, how do you handle difficult or emotionally charged situations with clients, such as disagreements or not telling them, and being the facilitator of a very fragile, sometimes fragile relationship and relationship building?
I think it kind of goes into that last question that we just had about like openness and being a little bit newer here. I would say that's been my biggest holdup in talking with people throughout the triad of the importance of like the openness on both sides, whether it's birth parents or adopting parents. I kind of like to break it down and like think that all their actions are like due to a fear of some sort, and being able to break it down and say, oh, they're just somebody that's afraid, it makes it seem less personal and kind of takes me out, like my own ideas out of the equation as well. And through that, I can work with them on why are they afraid, and what can we do to get past this fear. So if it's a birth parent, a majority of what I've seen thus far, it's either drug or alcohol abuse or mental health issues, which maybe, or something where it may be something outside of a marriage or whatnot. So like, are they afraid to tell their spouse? Are they afraid that their child will see them as a drug addict, alcoholic? Are they afraid that their child may grow to resent them or something throughout this? And once like I'm able to break those down of being like, hey, we offer these treatment services that we can get you into, like we can get you into a rehabilitation center. We can keep things kind of confidential, but like still keep the door open in the future, or help you have that conversation with a spouse, or like we can get you the mental health needs met that you may be seeking in order to get through this. And I think once I get like through those kind of, and if there's still one way or another, I'm like, okay, I tried, and like that's all I was able to do at that point. So that helps me separate myself from that. For adoptive parents, of why are you afraid? And normally it kind of goes back to those issues of like, what happens if the birth parents don't reciprocate our openness? Like, we need to cut this off or like kind of protect ourselves and the child. But I think that's just part of boundary setting, which is good to have, especially if you're parenting an adoptee, is boundary setting. It's not traditional parenting, and you need to put in extra work. So I kind of explained to them that end of it and how that will all work together, and that this can only benefit the child in the long run, just to even have that option available, or to when they grow up and they can see that you gave them that option, things may just not have worked out, just due to relationships or what state people were in. So I think that's been helpful in clearing that up.
Christian, I think you touched on an important point, that resistance almost is always born out of fear in any situation, not just when it comes to adoption. And as social workers, that's one of the hardest things that we have to do, is figure out what are your fears and how can we walk you through that, because that fear of the unknown just overtakes people a lot of the time. So I think that is a balancing act, right? Where we're trying to create boundaries and not overstep, but we're not therapists, but we're also trying to get to the bottom of what is the root of your fear and how can we work through that a little bit. So thank you for bringing that up. I think one of the most challenging aspects of social work in general is finding work-life balance and self-care, finding A, time for that, and B, what is self-care for each person. I know for me, our job is really demanding, and then I come home to a really demanding baby who I love more than anything, but my day is full, and to find time for self-care is challenging. How do you all go about doing that?
I think I always have like a plan, but following through with that plan is difficult, right? Like you said, a very demanding job. It's me and Katie over here in Cherry Hill. So we do, alternate, weekends, but you're always on the call, right? So I think in the beginning, when I first started working here, I had no balance. I'm going to be very honest. I put my whole focus on the job, on my clients, but now really just kind of pulling back a little bit more. So once it's 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock, right? So I'm not going to be checking my emails constantly, which I would do before, and then I would answer them, and it's just setting up this precedent that isn't attainable, right? Because I was starting to get burnt out. Like even during the day at work, sometimes I'll ask my supervisor, hey, can I just go for a short, like 5-minute walk around the block? And he's like, sure. Walking is huge for me. And then I've started going back to the gym, but we'll see how that goes.
That's always a hard one.
Yeah.
Our former podcast host, Jenna, gave me a great tip of when you're driving home, pick a sign, pick a stop sign, pick a stoplight, and say, that is where I'm leaving. Everything that happened at the office today.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
And
that. You know, I tell people we work nights, holidays, and weekends on placements and emergencies. So when it comes to the other things that are not emergencies, it is 9 to 5 business hours, and after that, you know, we work a lot on those holidays and weekends and nights. So it's important to have those boundaries to be able to take care of our self-care. I know you were speaking about you checking emails and other things. What are some things that are a part of what you do as a social worker that people may not know about?
I guess like I'm trying to think of like what I tell my friends, and like, oh, you do that? Like just going to the hospital. What was it, Sunday? I just had a placement, or 2 Sundays ago. And I was like, oh, I got called in, like I was at the hospital all day. And they're like, what were you doing there? And I was just walking this birth mother through kind of how they wanted their plan to look. I sat with her and like looked through a bunch of profiles with her. And I feel like a majority, like the paperwork can be a lot at times if you sit down and do it all at once. But I think a majority of my time is spent just talking with them, getting to know them. I like just getting to know who they are to begin with before I start digging into what their adoption part of the story is. That way I can kind of gauge on where they're at. If they're open, they can start feeling more comfortable with me. I like sharing stuff about myself. So that way it really shows that we're people first and we're not social workers necessarily, you know? And I think that's gone hand in hand with like helping me prioritize like self-care and like work-life balance, where it's, I don't know, once I get out of that hospital and I'm done for the day, like I'm done for the day. I've been like a big fan of that, and especially since it's like emotionally demanding. When I feel exhausted here, I reach out to my birth family, because I think a lot of like the toll that this job takes on me makes me think about my adoption and like connectivity. And so when I reach out to them, like I just feel better. Even like I'll just ask like how they're doing and check in. And I think that's been a big part of like that work-life balance as well.
Thank you, Christian. I think people don't always realize how personal this job can get, that we are often sitting in a hospital room with a woman who's just had a baby. That's the most personal time in somebody's life that we often are a part of by request. And it's really hard to not bring that home and not to think about that person for the next, several days until you see them again, and think about their situation. And that can be really hard and really challenging.
I was just going to mention that one thing that, we've been doing a lot more of these days, that not everybody necessarily expects a social worker to do, is we run around all day long to doctors' offices and clinics and any place that might be relevant to adoption, and we just sit down or just hand out paperwork. I recently got to sit down with a couple places and just because they were a little bit curious, like, hey, we don't really get to talk much, so say we do get someone that's interested in making an adoption plan, what do we do? And I'm like, so of course we got to finally sit down and have that discussion. But really, as a social worker, you don't really think about that whole outreach aspect, more as we're the ones, typically people come to us, we're the helper. But in this case, we're going out and we're seeking people and places, so I'd say that that's a big thing that we're into right now, and it's fun.
Engaging and educating the communities that we're in is a huge and important part of our jobs. That you're right, I don't think a lot of our clients or people in general really realize that we're doing weekly these days, that we're out there on the ground meeting people in person, like you said, Planned Parenthoods and hospitals, and we're going into these places to make sure that our resources are available to people that may need it in the future. And that's important, to be able to give people access when they might need it. And I know we could talk all day about how hard a lot of this job is, but a lot of it's really wonderful and rewarding as well. And that looks different for everyone. So what do you all consider a good day or a win in your book?
This is going to be difficult, right? Because it might not necessarily be a win for the adoptive parents or for the, like, when whatever is best for the child happens, whether it's a baby or an older child, whatever is best for that child happens, that's a win for me. Now, navigating the difficult emotions for whichever side of the triad that affects, that's, we'll handle that when we handle that. But I think just being able to see, plans really play out perfectly, and then that's the biggest win.
Yeah, that's a great point, that we do work with all members of the triad, and what we consider a win for one member may not necessarily be a win for another. I know for me, I love seeing the first visit that an adoptive family and a birth family have with the child, and not just at the hospital, which happens a lot, but that first visit after it's been a few months is one of my favorites, because we're often there. People still kind of want social workers there for that, which I love. And babies grow so fast at the beginning, and seeing, a birth parent reunite with their child after even just 6 months, they're so different at that point. And watching those relationships grow for me is why I keep doing this job every day.
It just reminds me of the yearly picnic, and one year it was a biological sibling that the birth parents were parenting, and he came just trotting up. He was tiny, maybe 4 or 5 years old, trotting up with a wrapped present, and I said, "Oh, who's that for?" And he said, "It's for my brother." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a win." Is when especially siblings are so important to me in openness and adoption. That's just a memory I will always carry with me on a bad day.
I think just finally, I'd love to know if any of you have advice for other adoptees who may be interested in pursuing a career in social work or even the adoption field.
Go to therapy first.
That's a good suggestion across the board, though.
No, but seriously, like we were talking about before, countertransference is very real. So really talking through any, issues that you go through, identity, attachment, just common themes that we see amongst adoptees, I think could really not only benefit you in the adoption field, but just in the social work field in general, because it's a very, you're working with people regardless of what field in social work you go into. So really kind of healing your inner child, your inner self, your inner adult, and being the best that you can be. I think that would be the advice I would give my younger self.
If you ever were considering a job as an adoptee in social work, specifically adoption social work, it took me at least 3 months or more to every time I walked in the hospital and saw the baby, I'd be like, that was me. Wow, that was me. And what is this child's life gonna look like? And it took me a long time to kind of process that. This is the first time I'm seeing a child that is to be adopted that wasn't me. And so I think it'll hit you, but the more you do it, the more you're like, okay, this baby is going and they're going to be loved, and just like I was loved. And so it's happy, but it'll hit you. You're like, yep, that's a baby. that was me. So yeah, I would say that was the biggest thing for me, but it passes. It does.
I was thinking the same thing as Jackie with the therapy. I would say though, being a male in social work, specifically with adoption, just reading up on just overall women's rights stuff, making sure you're being a total ally for all this, and understanding the stuff that you don't understand. I'll never know what it's like to give birth. I'll never kind of understand the position that a lot of these women who are giving birth are in, and what brought them to there. And I think that's been my biggest help so far, is kind of going into this counseling sessions and being able to be you experience something I'll never experience, so it leaves the floor open. And I think it really helps the people we work with not feel judged or anything, and kind of open up to me, because that was kind of a big fear I had, again, as a male adoptee social worker, thinking that like, I don't know, I might be like discredited or something. So I think doing your homework and your research before you get into this field is like your biggest asset.
Thank you for sharing and recognizing anything that you're coming in with, and that's what we can talk out and talk therapy, and that's for anybody. And at Adoptions from the Heart, we're so grateful to work with all members of the adoption triad as co-workers. A lot of times adoptive parents are more common to come join us as social workers, and we're so grateful for you all, for your vulnerability and sharing with us what it is like to be an adult adoptee and be able to share with families, you know, the highs and lows of that. So we really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing. And I was wondering if Jackie and Christian, you could talk a little bit about, just tell our listeners or viewers about your support group that you've started.
Yeah, so we started this really great support group, and I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of adoptees. And I feel like we're kind of running it as like an open forum type deal, where it's a good place for adoptees to kind of vent and maybe like take some ideas from others and check in and see how they're feeling. Because I know for myself, I think this would include Jackie as well, just like the feeling of validation, or like the idea of not having our feelings validated at a young age, was something that we both kind of struggled with or may have bothered us. Again, sorry, Jackie, if I'm speaking for you.
No, you're doing great.
But to have that open area and that open forum and realize, wow, other people are going through the same thing as me. I know in my process, that was the biggest help I had into getting help and staying with getting help. So yeah, we run normally every second Tuesday. I know we have a few dates that are mixed up in the future, but I believe everything's updated on the website. Our youngest person we have in there is 15. I think I'm 28, so I'll be in there too if there's any older people that are looking to join, and both for men and women. And anybody that may not identify as either. I don't know. It's just a great place. Come hang out for an hour, you know, get everything out on the table, things that you may not be able to tell your parents, things you may be afraid to tell your parents. This isn't affiliated with them at all, so it's just a nice safe space to talk.
Thank you so much to Christian, Jackie, and Emily. It is really powerful for our audience to hear from folks who not just educate folks about adoption, but you have lived it. I think it's really neat that here at the agency, we do have staff that are a member of the adoption triad. It makes us a stronger agency and being able to better serve our community. So please feel free to tune in next week. We are going to be connecting with other social workers here at the agency that also happen to be adoptive parents. Thank you so much for your continued support, and definitely see future episodes here at Adoptions from the Heart TV. Thanks so much, guys. Hey guys, if you are enjoying the content here at AFTH TV, please subscribe and hit the bell.